Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fuel for Success. Today is episode number 88. 88 is an interesting number. I won't go into all the math stuff, but it's one of those very cool uh, polygonal numbers, and it's an untouchable number. And there's various other. It's also a palindrome, but it's also a cool number. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good morning. Use two words I need a dictionary for, my friend. Two words that I couldn't even repronounce. And I know you like to do that to me. 88 reasons why Jesus is coming in 88. Do you remember that?
I was a no.
That was a big deal back in 1988, my friend.
This guy would have been an atheist in 1988. So no.
So, are you glad it's Friday? Is my question. And if you are, can you please tell us why?
Uh, I am glad it's Friday for a couple of reasons. One is I've got a bunch of stuff to execute tomorrow as well,
Really?
and
You mind
you know,
sharing? Like, well, what goes on tomorrow?
well, I probably need to bring that trailer back to my good friend David, who let us use it for the mission trip in St. Louis. It's been sitting in front of my house all week,
Tell us more about
and I've
David.
been busy taking.
Tell us more about David.
Well, David was on the show. I was at David's shop at the Art King's welding shop. A couple months ago, I think. I don't remember the episode number, and interviewed him about his business on a Thursday. Sort of the probably the Duck Dynasty episode. There was a lot of camo going on.
So
Anyway,
maybe share
so
one
David,
thing that sticks out about the shop that you noticed.
other than the general redneckness of it, no, David's a great guy, and he's building a business from scratch. He's successful, but also there's struggles with any business that's getting started. He's a great friend of mine, and he's very generous. He let us use the trailer. He didn't charge us anything. Said, here, you go ahead and use it. Uh,
Describe,
take it down to St.
describe what it
Louis,
felt
and
like when he said that. Like when he said go ahead and use it. Well, what kind of feelings were you feeling?
um, well, you know me, I'm analytical and I'm an engineer, so I thought, well, okay, I need to make sure that I have everything set up and get the trailer hitch in place, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm process man. It's like, okay, let's make this happen. What do we have to do? It's my buddy David, so
So did it leave
it was
you
cool.
feeling grateful?
Yes,
So how'd I do? I did
totally
pretty
grateful.
good. I went like 3 minutes into full blown counselor mode of asking about feelings, my friend, and you did a really good job sharing your feelings. Speaking of sharing your feelings, Mike, today's family and relationships, right? One of the things that has to happen, it has to, in effective families is open communication and the ability to share our feelings. A lot of people struggle with sharing our feelings, Mike. I think many reasons.
True.
A lot of wives, they hold in their feelings. Definitely a lot of husbands hold in their feelings. And it's staggering how many teenagers hold in their feelings. So, can you describe, in your opinion, why A, it's important to share your real feelings, and B, why is it such a struggle for people to actually do that, my friend?
Sure. One of the main reasons that it's important to share your feelings is that it opens the door for clear communication. A lot of times, conflict that we have in our life is due almost entirely to misunderstandings and not understanding what the other person's perspective is. And so when we don't share those feelings, then other people around us, especially those that we're close to, may not know how we think about a certain situation or how we feel about something that happens in life, and so they will make their decisions based on their perception of how you feel rather than how you actually feel.
Ooh,
And sometimes we get caught up in thinking that, especially when we're holding in our feelings, that somebody else really doesn't care, when in fact they care deeply and intimately, but they misunderstand what your perspective is, and so they make the wrong decisions and make the decisions that continue to drive you crazy. um, the second part of your question was, Why don't people share those more often? Um, it's because when they start to open up and share, the other person drops off the internet and they're not there anymore. No. But actually, that's close to the right answer. The right answer is, or at least my opinion, I would say the right answer, but my opinion on that is that people don't share because they're afraid of rejection, and they're afraid that uh, people aren't going to understand the way that they feel. They're afraid that, yeah, exactly what Britton said. People are afraid of rejection. They feel like, the other person is going to push them away. It's going to cause separation, when in fact that's nearly never the case.
Another thing that's very important when it comes to sharing your feelings is timing. This is a big mistake a lot of people make is they don't choose the right time to have the serious conversation. There it all comes down to communication. It all comes down to being 100% open and transparent, right? And being able to share your feelings. There's two things I would say. Number one, to the person who's hurt or needs to get something off their chest or maybe has a frustration, always pick the right time. Same thing I would say to the person that's receiving from your teenager, your wife, is very important, or your husband, that you make people feel safe to share their real feelings. The last thing you want to do with a teenager or a child or a wife or definitely a husband is, when they open up and you react the wrong way and they all of a sudden don't feel safe to tell you their real feelings, it could be a long time before they ever come back on that bridge again of opening their feelings. So it's very important that we give the right reactions, Mike, and not overreact to people when they're sharing their feelings and not jump to conclusions or become defensive. A lot of times people struggle in open relationships because of defensiveness. We hate the idea that we disappoint somebody. We hate the idea that we failed a loved one. We hate the idea that, we didn't, maybe we just failed, right? We hate the idea of that. But at the same time, you've got to understand that just because someone is telling you their feelings and sharing a hurt doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world. And don't become all defensive. And the last thing you want to do is justify yourself. So many people in
Right.
their defensiveness immediately start to justify yourself. You know what I've learned, Mike? When I've hurt people, unless they really ask for an explanation, it's best for me to not give one. It's best for me to really listen and acknowledge that hurt and not try to defend or justify myself. I think those two things right there are really hurting relationship, being defensive and justifying our behavior. Sometimes, Mike, the best thing to do is just simply say, I'm sorry, or admit I was wrong. Never say, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Mike." I'm sorry that that you think that. Well, you know what that does? That causes you to close up. They're not going to open up as easy when you talk like that. You got to say, Mike,
Yeah.
that was definitely not my intention at all, and I'm extremely sorry. I want to make this right. Rather than coming across kind of arrogantly or harsh or defensively. I just think that's extremely important. Anything you want to throw to that, Mike? I'm seeing some comments over here. I don't know if there's any that we want to acknowledge.
I put Al's question up here. I think you covered it pretty well. But very specifically, Al asks, how do you make people who are easily offended feel safe? And I like what you said about really simplifying your response is a great way. A lot of times people feel like they have to almost counsel someone in those situations. And a lot of times that's not what you need to do. You need to just listen and take it.
That's the
And then just
last
say, if it's something that they're expressing that they feel like you've offended them, then just say you're sorry. Be done with it. And be heartfelt and listen and acknowledge their feelings. Like I think Britton said. Um, and that's it. Don't try to get all anything. Just be simple about it, and that helps a lot.
Keep it simple, and like you said, listening and being heard. Sometimes, Mike, just hearing somebody out, even uttering the words, I can see how you feel that way, and meaning it, meaning like I may not necessarily agree with how they're feeling, but I can at least acknowledge, you know what? I totally understand how you would feel that way. I had a conversation last night with someone um, who had said something behind my back, and I considered him to be a friend. So I called him and I said, look, I said, I want to share something with you because it's been bothering me for a few weeks, and I'm probably 2 weeks too long on this conversation, but I want to explain to you exactly what I heard that you said. And listen, first thing I want you to know is I literally believe in innocent till proven guilty. I really believe there is such a thing as the whole story. I also believe that there is such a thing as, sometimes, Mike, people, they get defensive. They're quick to, like our friend Al, which Al, by the way, good questions he asks all the time. I like this guy Al here. He's a good question asker, and I like that about him. I like people that get on our show and ask good questions. So the key is, Al, I could have called last night and been offended and been like, immediately like attacking or jumping to conclusions that this person actually meant ill. I really believe some of the people that disappoint us and hurt us, Mike, don't mean ill. They don't mean to
Right.
hurt us. They really don't. That was not their intention. Like this guy, right? It really wasn't his intention to gossip about me. It really wasn't. Once I heard his side of the story, it made absolutely perfect sense. You know.
Is it Christmas?
But believe it or not, that's your ringtone. You're the only one, you and Caleb, that have your own ringtone, and that's the one I set yours at. So anytime I hear like doorbells and like feels like we're singing Carol of the Bells, I just know Mike's texting. So, anyways, I hope
Angel just got its wings.
I hope you got your black coffee.
Yeah, sorry, I was actually responding to what I didn't realize was a group text.
So,
Hey,
I'm offended. I'm trying to do a show here where we're trying to help people out there in this world, and you come on our show and you text, and then you interrupt me.
I can understand. I can understand how you feel, Matt.
I see why that would bother you. I see that,
I'm
Mike.
sorry.
A lot of times too, guys, can
I'm
I
sorry.
say this real quick? There's actually, okay, the Bible, you ready for this? Here's the answer to all your relationship dilemmas, all of them. Hear me? There's not one thing you'll ever face in any relationship that the Bible has not given you an answer. There are so many biblical principles of how to have good, whole, healthy relationships. You want to know one of them right now? Kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Jesus said these words: agree with your adversary quickly. Quickly,
Quickly.
right? Like there's a power sometimes in saying to somebody who's highly ticked off at you and chewing you out, saying, you know what, you're right. You're totally right. You have a good point, and your point is taken. Like you're actually right. I deserve this. I deserve to get chewed out. I deserve for you to be angry at me. And another very powerful biblical principle of relationships is, and very few of us live this. Mike is one of the few that does. And that's a soft answer turns away wrath. I mean, how many marriages would never need to go to counseling if they lived that one scripture? A soft answer turns away wrath. In other words, like it literally diffuses anger. A soft answer turns away wrath. It pushes it away. So imagine us being able to respond without yelling, without screaming. I think that if you scream at your spouse or your kids, you're exemplifying that you have no control. And that is something you definitely need to make a high priority for personal growth, not to be one that overreacts and screams and gets, Bible says, another biblical principle, be slow to anger. It literally says that. It says another very powerful biblical principle, Mike, is it says be swift to hear. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Slow to speak. Wow. What if in our conversations with our spouse and our kids, we were swift to hear, in other words, quick to hear. I want to hear what's going on. I really want to hear before you even make a judgment. I've got some really close friends that I'll say something to them, and they're like automatically assuming. I'm like, wait a minute, let me finish the story, and I'm saving you a heartbreak real quick. If you'll let me just finish this sentence, it's actually good. You know what I'm saying?
You,
So,
you,
swift to hear,
so
slow to speak. Imagine if we somebody said here, Ashley said, I heard you say ticked off. You're getting this ticked off. Yeah, I do say ticked off. I don't know if what's.
she she's making a reference to she has Lyme's disease, and I've talked to her about it because I've suffered from that too, and that you get that from a wood tick. So that's what she's making a reference to. I was sitting here thinking, Matt, as you were explaining those, and at the risk of sounding very carnal, because you went through like four biblical principles that help, and it reminded me of something. And remember now, because years ago I used to be an atheist, but there's something that I picked up from a movie. I'm going to use a pop culture reference, and like a really bad one too, because the movie was Pulp Fiction. Um, but there was something on there that impacted my mind so much that it still sticks with me, and I think about it probably at least once a week. And the two of the characters were getting to know each other, and one of them said to the other one, and I don't remember what the first one was. It was like Elvis or Johnny Cash or something like that. Anyways, the other question was, when someone's talking, do you listen or do you wait to talk?
Oh,
And it's like there's two kinds of people, and since I heard that, that's impacted my life because I see it. I see people in conversations, and you can tell the people that are waiting to talk. They're not even listening. They're just thinking about what they're going to say. And I've purposed in my life to be the person that listens instead of waiting to talk.
yeah,
Except sometimes on the show, I'm waiting to talk.
yeah, and I totally understand. Me too. Like there's times you're saying something and I'm listening. I'm like ready to come out the gate. So thanks for that, Mike. I received that, my friend. I received. A lot of times, Mike, with that we fear because people do it. Like some people fear that you're digging at them. In other words, you're saying something in a group of people, or I'm saying something on a show. You know, I might have said. Sometimes people accuse preachers of this. Well, I know you were just saying that right at me. Why didn't you just talk to me? Some people do that. Some people do dig. They make statements to a person like on the show, like Mike just dug at me right now, and he threw a dig at me right on live show. And thankfully we're quick to forgive each other. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's good to have it,
What
right?
did I dig?
And we have a good flow in life.
Uh,
We don't get if we get frustrated with each other, we're literally over it in seconds, maybe a minute if that. I think that's a trait of somebody that you're not going to go far in life if you're one that holds on to little things. Like, listen, man, you've got to become a person that accepts other people's humanity and accepts, you know what, they had a bad day, okay? They blew it. I know they shouldn't have said that. That's not them, and I think that we're not merciful enough to our family and friends, and we hold on to things that they do, like, okay, so your husband literally forgot to get the milk, and I know you told him 3 times, but really, do you need to ignore him the whole night because of that? You know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, Matt is just feeling convicted. Okay, you know what, Amber, you're off the show. That is it. First of all, we don't appreciate. No, we're just kidding. Don't you hate people that are like so angry all the time? Like I was like pulling in the grocery store yesterday, and I was getting ready to take a right, and this person was there apparently going to take clearly my parking space, which I'll gladly give up my parking space. But they like flipped out. They like that is raging anger. And I was like, hey, cool, come here, guys, it's yours. Please. You know what I mean? Please, it's yours. Rest, breathe, And I don't know, Mike. Why do you think people are that way?
They're dealing with hurt in their life. And here's the thing: when somebody's like that, you don't necessarily have to assume that they're always like that. I've had like 5 and 10 minute spans of my life that weren't good. And sometimes we encounter somebody at that peak frustration of their life. So just because somebody, you encounter somebody in the parking lot that's freaking out or flipping out, I mean, you never know what just happened. I mean, I've had situations in life where 26 things all happened in 15 minutes, and I'm literally mind is wheeling, and I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? So, although I know there are some people that are just angry all the time too. I
They
used to
just
work at a
are.
lumber yard, and on
You know, 'cause I said this
on
one.
Saturday, every angry contractor was there. Sorry, go ahead.
I said this one more thing about the vein of what we're talking about with relationships and what Mike and I are sharing actually will help you guys. If try to work as a personal growth in your life, really be very, very focused and intentional about overcoming the need or the weakness of taking things so personal. Like I said, if you're gonna have high level, high quality relationships, right? You literally can't take things so personal. And that's where people get tripped up, Mike. That's where people lose it is, and I love what Amber said right here, giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's so good. But not taking things so personal and thinking that everything is aimed towards you, or thinking that, God forbid, if somebody does share something, like, I'll give you an example, okay? I'm going to give you a real life example. Like your kid, let's say you're divorced, right? And let's say you don't pack enough food in your kid's lunch, right? And let's say the other parent says, "Hey, if you don't mind, Johnny doesn't feel like you're packing enough food in his lunch." Like, that shouldn't be something you should get mad at Johnny for. I see a lot of parents in divorce situations that get angry about this, when in reality, like, you should thank Johnny for telling you. You should actually say, "John, wow, I appreciate you telling me. I didn't know. I mean, I'll pack more tomorrow." And not take things so personal, like cry the rest of the night and get mad at Johnny and don't talk to Johnny, and "I can't believe you would tell your dad that." Real life example. You know what I'm saying? I think that's important, not to take things so personal. I think a lot of times our teenagers are like tiptoeing around their parents because you take everything so personal. And you got to be careful with
Right.
that. You got to be very careful with that. Anyway, your thoughts, Mike.
That's called being an adult. Um, sometimes we
Is that
we
your
we just
Mike's
have to
way of
deal.
saying grow up? Like, is
Yeah.
that your Hopkins way, the Mike Hopkins way? I'm gonna write a book one time called The Mike Hopkins Way. Because Mike Hopkins is
Oh,
just the smooth. He's the cool of. He's the brother from another mother. That's all there is to it. He's just he defines smooth, right? So that's your way of saying grow up,
yeah. Pretty much.
and we believe in that.
Yeah.
We believe people ought to grow up.
Pull up your britches. Get over it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people ought to grow up. When you're an angry
And
person,
that's
what Marie
easy to
said.
say.
This is actually really good. When you're an angry person,
Oh,
your body will become addicted to, because of the chemicals in your brain. And let me tell you right now, what Marie just said is 100% truth in fact. And that's good, Marie, and you're right. People actually do, even in relationships where there's a lot of rage and fighting, there's like some pretty unhealthy chemicals that are actually being released in your brain that's creating an addiction to that. And that's why I think we go for wholeness, we go for healthy relationships. Like, I'm gonna give you an example. Can I throw an analogy? I gave a teenager last night that I was doing some life coaching for, who was going through a breakup, and he was talking about like how perfect his girl, was, and everything was just so perfect, but these one or two things that that were actually deal breakers. It wasn't like, the fact that, you know, I don't know. Anyways, the bottom line is I said, look, what's your favorite food you've ever had? Tell me your favorite meal. And he told me his favorite meal. It was at Carrabba's. I said, let's suppose you go to Carrabba's and you get there and you have the most amazing meal. The first bite is unbelievable. The second bite is unbelievable. The third bite is unbelievable. You're like, God, you're like drooling. You're like, this is the best meal I've ever had. And it's a perfect meal. And you go to take that fourth bite, and when you pick it up, there's this long black hair in it. Like, what happens to this perfect meal now, right? Like, ugh, like, no matter how amazing the first three bites were, no matter how awesome the rest of it looks, even if the waiter convinces you, look, it's just one hair, right? It's no biggie, just pull it out, right? There's something about it that meal no longer looks as appealing. And I said, what you've discovered is that there's a lot of people that have good qualities, but they got some black hairs, my friend, some situations and areas of their life. And I said, so don't feel like, because he was a little hung up on the fact that she's amazing, she's this, she's this, she's this, but there's like these two or three things that are actual deal breakers that are what we call black hairs. That no matter how amazing the meal
Mm,
is, it's got to go back because I cannot eat this anymore. It doesn't matter.
wow.
Like it does, right, Mike? I mean, are you the kind that continue to eat your meal when you get a black hair in it?
Listen, I'm the wrong guy to ask. So depends. Probably. I probably would because it doesn't matter to me.
Can I get a
Um,
can I get a grade on the analogy I gave him? I like made it up on the spot last night.
that
Can I get a grade?
on a 1 to 10, that analogy is an 11.
See that?
Seriously, that's a great,
And it
great
hit
analogy.
me. Like right in the moment of the coaching, I thought I needed an analogy, and boom, it just hit me. It was God. But I really believe that people that are single and people that are dating should really take that analogy and realize, hey, wait a minute. You know what? There's some good here. But the moment you see that black hair, it's it's no. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Hey, that's actually Christy asked a question earlier in the show that I've had down here in the queue, and that's a great segue. She's asking about what are some things that are deal breakers.
Well, to me, the number one thing is lying. You cannot, you
Mm,
cannot, you cannot, you cannot have a healthy relationship without honesty and trust. You cannot, you can't. Like the day that is just, if you, like to me, the number one deal breaker is someone that will lie to you. You want people that will tell you the truth, even when it hurts, even if the truth is going to bring a loss, even if the truth is going to like destroy. I just think, Mike, what's really missing is just straight, real, deep honesty. That's the number one
yeah.
deal breaker, in my opinion. I'll give one more, then I want you to give a few. Another deal breaker, in a maybe in a dating relationship, would be somebody that doesn't put God first, especially if you're a lady. Like if you're thinking about dating a man and you're more spiritual than he is, and he doesn't show signs that he's passionate about God. There's no, if he can't lead his own spiritual life, he can't lead your life and he can't lead your children. So I think, Mike, too many people go into these relationships and they don't pay attention to the deal breakers, and they don't pull the trigger quick enough. Like they keep eating the hair thinking, oh, it's no big deal.
Hmm.
So what would you say, Mike, or a deal breaker or two?
Well, after rereading Christy's question, I see too that she's asking about maybe something in somebody's past, which really complicates the question a little bit. But let me say this: um, I people definitely can change. I mean, if you looked at some of the stuff in my past, it wouldn't relate to who I am today at all. But at the same time, if there's like patterns of behavior in somebody's past, it could really indicate what I would call a character flaw. And I would look for character problems rather than like behavioral problems, because situations happen and people do things that you know they that don't necessarily, sometimes just stuff happens and people have things in their past, but I would look for indicators of character issues. As far as like a behavior that somebody has, today, that would be a deal breaker for me. The one thing I would caution against is and look for, and I would be intentional about it and look for indicators of someone who's selfish. And
Ooh.
selfishness is something that is hard to overcome.
That's actually really good. Mike, that's really good. And I think maybe next Friday, I think we should dive deeper into the deal breaker subject. Sounds like, we love helping singles. We love helping people in their dating relationships because the only thing I will say in closing is she said, is there such a thing as a deal breaker after committing to the relationship? Absolutely, there is. If it's a deal breaker, my friends, it's a deal breaker. You know what I mean? Then that's obviously for a deeper, when we have more time. Can I say this real quick? We're closing. My friends, first of all, everyone that was live this morning, thank you for taking time out of your Friday morning to be with us. Thank you for the comments that you left over there and the questions and the interaction. Mike and I both love reading these. You help other people, you help us. Enjoy your weekend, my friends. Anybody that's ever signed up to become a volunteer for the Mission 25 Dream Team, we're having a spreecast tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You should have gotten an email. If not, you'll see a link on social media. Join with us on that. Also, go to fuelforsuccess.tv to watch any previous of our 88 episodes. You can go to iTunes or YouTube. But friends, enjoy your weekend. Mike and I will be back Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to bring you a very important talk about health and weight loss. Mike, take us the last 5 minutes, 5 seconds, and say what you feel like saying for us to have a good weekend, my friend.
Hey, well, first of all, I like Maria calling me Hopkins because it makes me feel like I'm playing football again. Like, good job, Hopkins. But hey, you know what? The weekend's coming up. Execute your passion this weekend. Just do stuff that you enjoy doing. God bless you. Have a great time, and we'll see you Monday.
No hat on backwards this weekend, Mike. It's on front today.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. We'll see what happens.
Hey, we love you guys. God bless
Love
you.
y'all.
Enjoy your day, and thank you for your time. Thank you, Mike.